All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me for another YouTube Live. Today's September September 6th. I tried to bring little cat because my sister complains all the time when I don't. So now now you know why I don't always bring him, because he's a cat. He doesn't always like coming and doing the things that we want him to. But he's okay. He's a good boy. So thank you everyone for joining. Sorry, I was just finishing up another interview, and it took a little longer than expected. So back now, have another couple hours, and so we should be able to get to a lot of questions, and hopefully be able to answer everybody's questions. So there's a couple of questions that came up earlier. One was from RF, said, Dr. Chaffee, I'm a fellow carnivore, but you made two claims recently that I can find no sources for. One is that the Mongol horde of Genghis Khan were all over 6'2", and that, or 6 foot, and two, that animals are in ketosis. Well, animals are in ketosis typically, and they have done studies on lions and wolves and found that they're in ketosis, but also you can extrapolate from other ones that haven't specifically tested that on, which goes, what are they eating? There's 70% of animal species are carnivores, so they're not eating carbohydrates, so they're eating fat and protein, and so they'll be in that metabolic state that we call ketosis, where you're running on your fat stores, where you eat food, you store energy as fat, and then you run on the fat. That's what we call ketosis. And also a lot of animals that go through periods that they're not eating, so especially predators, hunters, they may go days or weeks without, or a week or so without eating. And so what else are they going to be in? They're going to be in a state of ketosis, and that's so-called fasting metabolism, which is not a fasting metabolism. It's just a non-carbohydrate metabolism. And that's actually what it's being called now in biochemistry classes. But then herbivores who eat fibrous plants, what are they eating? They're eating fiber, but they're not absorbing the glucose. The bacteria and the protozoa or other microorganisms are eating the cellulose, and they're excreting saturated fat, and then they're dying off, and they're being consumed as protein. So even though they're eating fiber to feed and harvest the bacteria. So really they're just bacteria farmers, and they feed the bacteria and then they eat them, just like we feed cows and then we eat them. And so they're getting fat and protein from the bacteria. We get fat and protein from the cow. And so they're being ketosis as well. So I don't know if anyone's ever tested that in cows and gorillas, but that's just a fundamental understanding of the biology and biochemistry. Hummingbirds, no idea what a hummingbird is, eating a bunch of nectar or honeybees or those sorts of things. No idea what their biochemistry is. Don't really care. Herbivorous animals that eat fibrous plants, they're absorbing fat and protein. Animals that eat other animals, they're absorbing fat and protein. So they're going to be in that metabolic state, and they're not taking in a whole bunch of carbohydrates. When you put cows on grains and high carb foods, the exact same thing happens to them as happens to us. They overeat, and they deposit pathological variants of fat in the muscle, in the organs, and around the organs. And so in the muscle, it's called steatosis. You see this on MRI in people that are metabolically sick. And then we're trying to reproduce this in cows. And how do we do that? We give them grains. And we have fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And we say, woo, we don't know what happens with that. But you know how to make it in a duck. You stuff a feeding tube down its throat and you pour grains in its mouth. Okay? So carbs will cause those pathological effects. So we see those same pathological effects when they're eating carbs, and you see all those problems go away when they just eat their, when they get their fat and protein, which is what we're getting. And so they're going to be in that same metabolic state, because similar metabolic states and hormones cause the same problems in us as it does in those animals. Genghis Khan and the Mongol horde. There are a number of books and histories on the subject. Just go around and Google and say, oh, how tall were these people? They compare this to, they try to extrapolate from modern average heights when people are living in a modern post-agricultural society, look at those averages and then trying to say, well, Genghis Khan was probably around that height too. You're talking about a 1,000-year disparity between the two and an entirely different diet. And so when you go out into the steppes, in the steppe country, like the Mongols out there that are still just eating traditional meat, things like these are big dudes. And then you get in the cities and all sorts of stuff with this post-agricultural garbage that people are eating, very different. And their height and health are very different as well. And you see this in pre-agricultural and post-agricultural societies everywhere in the world, in the fossil record, and as it changed and changed from pre-agricultural to post-agricultural, you see the height and health and brain size diminish. And so we see that in the Mongols going to a post-agricultural society as well. So pre-agriculture, they're going to be taller. And there's a great book by Jack Weatherford called Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World. It's an amazing book, super interesting. And it talks about how these people were very tall, very big, extremely healthy, and that their diet was very rich in proteins and fats and animal-based nutrition. So they were much healthier than the people that they were fighting. Now, there's going to be differences and disparities, especially because the Mongol horde grew, because they would go and they would take over an area and they would basically say, hey, you want to join me? You'll be accepted in as, full citizens, we'll accept you in, adopt, some of your leaders and kids as, our leaders and brother, like Genghis Khan had his mom adopt a lot of different, people, kids of tribes and nations he took over, so that they would be his brothers. And so they would be in his inner circles and things like that. And then their troops would be allowed in and just as completely full, with full rights and things like that. And they wouldn't be punished. But if you resisted, then they would make extreme examples of you. So people would keep joining in. And obviously they're fully developed, who knows how tall they are. But the multi-generational ones that are just eating meat, those guys would be really, really tall. And, it talks about this in there about how Genghis Khan was an extremely tall man, even compared to his peers. And, and then they talks about the disparities in the height and health between these different armies is significant as well. So, I don't know if he specifically says, what their average height is, but you can extrapolate from a lot of these sources how tall these guys were. And different fossil records show the average heights of different populations. I mean, going back in the Qin dynasty, I saw a study, when I was in probably junior high school, about how in the first, dynasty in China, the Qin dynasty, the soldiers there were on average like 6'3". And so this would have been sort of before, it really moved to like, very rice-based sort of population. So you see a lot of these things. And look at, people in China over the last century, they've just gone shorter and shorter and shorter because they were starved and weren't able to eat meat, and they were just, had these famines. Like, you shrink if you are, as a population, you shrink if you're not able to get enough nutrition during development. We know from I don't know if I ever said specifically they were all over 6 foot with Genghis Khan, maybe, but that would have, would have been an extrapolation. But there have been fossil records from people, hunting, the big mammoth hunters and things like that, showing that they were on average up to 6'2", some places up to 6'4", average. So these are big, strong people. Native Americans, the Cheyenne in the Great Plains in the late 1800s were on average 5'10". And there's a paper in the 2001 called "The Tallest in the World," and showing that these people in the Great Plains in America were the tallest human beings alive on Earth, and way taller than the average American at the time, or average European at the time. And the interesting part about that is that they were already on the reservations. They had already wiped out the buffalo and the bison. And and they had basically didn't have the same supply of meat and food that they normally had before. And so they said that older generations were way taller than the younger generations that had been raised on the reservations and things like that. So they said if they'd done this, study 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it would have been much taller still, when they were all just eating bison. And so that's what we see every single time in the Mongols in account after account after account, historical account, not just, some blog post, like Jack Weatherford's book, which is great. I'd highly recommend it for everybody. It's very interesting. They talk about, the health and vitality of these people because of their diet, and they were just bigger physically than everybody else. So I don't know exactly what you're referring to, saying that they're over 6 foot. I don't know if I ever said that, but just they were really big, tall people. Maybe he did, but that would have been sort of from that. Also wanted to give a shout out to my buddy Chris Brandlin, who's been helping me patent all my podcasts. So Chris Brandlin is called goes by the Carnivore Lawyer, and he helps other people in carnivore communities with free legal advice if things come up. So people can find him at Brandlin Law, BRANDLIN law.com, and can check him out there. All right. Let me see here. Here's one from Rob Miller. It says, is it necessary to limit the amount of liver one eats? I don't trust the people who say we should. I think it's probably a good idea not to go overboard. It's very nutrient dense, but therein lies a problem. You get too much and you can get nutrient overload. You can actually get what's called hypervitaminosis. So too many vitamins. And that can be a problem, especially the fat soluble vitamins the fat soluble vitamins that show up, like vitamin A, for instance. There's a lot of retinol in liver. It's actually unsafe to eat polar bear liver because there's so much vitamin A. It's actually would be a lethal dose. It can kill you. And if you eat enough seal liver, that can kill you too. And that's why polar bears have so much vitamin A in their liver, because they eat a lot of seals that have a lot of vitamin A in their livers. And so cows don't have nearly as much as all that, but they do have a good amount. And so for those reasons, you can get too much of a good thing. Think of it as we're trying to do this naturally, right? We're trying to eat our natural diet, and our natural diet consisted of animals we would hunt, raise, and kill, and we would typically have access to the animals that we hunted. And so you take down a buffalo, that thing has enough meat on it to feed an individual for 2 years or more, with tons of meat and fat every day, just from the skeletal meat and fat. And it's got 1 liver, it's got 1 heart, it's got 2 kidneys, right? So that needs to last, right? And so one liver over the course of 2 years, it's a big liver, but it's 2 years. So just I just try to keep things in proportion, So if you're just eating, half a pound of liver every single day, it's going to catch up to you. At first, probably it'll be fine because, almost everybody is nutritionally deficient. And so starting out on a carnivore diet, it's probably a good idea to get some extra liver in you. But once you catch up, you can get hypervitaminosis. So that's where that comes from. So, I don't think everyone needs to have liver. Most people just do just fine, just on skeletal meat and fat. I check their bloods. I check their nutrients. I've checked mine. I've had liver sort of 3-4 times in a decade, and all my nutrients were in optimal ranges. And so that's fine if you're eating certain meat that's maybe more grain fed and it's not near as nutritious as other sorts of things. A bit of liver is not going to hurt you. If you have genetic disorders like MTHFR and you require just a bit more B12 and folate, you might need a bit of liver. If you have malabsorption issues, if you have pernicious anemia or partial pernicious anemia, where you can only absorb a certain amount of B12, but you're not all the B12 that you eat, You're going to need higher concentrations of B12. So those sorts of things, change. And so, maybe someone would benefit from liver. Not everybody will. Most people don't. Everyone will improve. But if you have some sort of nutritional malabsorption issue, maybe liver is a good idea. If you're going to eat liver and you're going to eat liver regularly, I usually just say try to keep it in proportion. Try to keep those proportions in mind. A couple ounces of liver a day should be fine. A couple ounces of liver a couple days a week is often more than enough. So keep that in mind, and just do what's right for you. Check your blood work. Check your nutrients. If you're in a perfect level with that amount of liver, keep going. If you're a little lower than optimal, bump it up a bit. If you're above where you need to be, well, you don't maybe need to eat as much. So just keep that in mind. What's happening? Oh, little cat's getting into things. Hold on a second. Okay, he's fine. So apparently he does want to stay. Anyway, so getting on to some of the super chats. Rick Diaz, thank you very much for the super chat. It was awesome getting to meet you at the River City Beef Roundup. My question is on vertigo. Any insights if the carnivore diet can help? My sister has had it and is diabetic. Well, it certainly helps with diabetes. It does depend on what's causing the vertigo. If it's something to do, with hyperglycemia, etc., and inflammation, it could very well help. It just depends. I mean, there's different causes of vertigo, and so I have seen people improve their vertigo, but it's anecdotal. And again, it would depend on what's causing it. If she's diabetic and as a consequence of her diabetes damaging the nerves involved in her balance, then could well improve things. It's definitely worth a try. I mean, she's going to get all sorts of other improvements as well, and it's going to cure her diabetes. It's going to just get rid of it completely. I mean, it's like, well, how do you cure lead poisoning? Stop eating lead. So how do you cure diabetes? Stop eating things that cause diabetes, right? So carbs, sugar, alcohol, seed oils, those sorts of things. The things that damage the lipid raft, which is research that's coming out from my friend Paul Mason. Very interesting. Keep an eye out for that. But it's going to cure that. It's going to get rid of your diabetes or her diabetes, and that could potentially help with her vertigo as well. So it's worth a try, but I can't say for sure. Well, there you go. There's this one from Lisa C. Says carnivore cured my terrible vertigo. So there you go. So again, there are anecdotal cases of people curing their vertigo, and that's great. But it does depend on what's causing it, of course, and it may not be dietary related. But so many things are, like 90% of the things that we treat now are come down to chronic diseases, and the majority of those chronic diseases can be completely resolved with dietary changes. So definitely worth a try. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing. Gargoth, the Destroyer, thank you very much for the super chat. Because of you, carnivore 7 months, thriving, so many benefits can't number. Question, well, first of all, great. That's really awesome to hear. I'm glad to hear that. Question, I sun with plenty of sun in the summer, but live in a 4-season climate. Should I worry about vitamin D in the winter? No, it's all right. As long as you're eating high quality animal fats, grass-fed butter, for instance, or grass-fed tallow, grass-fed steak, it's going to have a lot of vitamin D3 in it. And D3 is the kind that you need. D2 is the plant version, and the plant versions of things typically suck. So, and the vitamin D is no different. So, if you're eating a lot of animal fats, you should be fine. The Inuit actually have great vitamin D. They live at such latitudes that they will never get any vitamin D from the sun. It just doesn't matter how much sun exposure they get up at the towards the North Pole. It just doesn't. You don't get enough UVB light penetrating the atmosphere at that oblique angle to generate vitamin D. So they get it from their diet. So marine animals are going to have a good source of vitamin D as well. Cod liver oil is going to have a good source of vitamin D. And but just animal fats, just wild caught fish, fatty fish, and grass-fed animal fat. It's going to be fine. So yeah, no, you'll be fine. So a question from Jay Webster. Thank you very much for the super chat, Jay. I've seen examples of carnivore lowering CAC. Any thoughts on if it could help with intracranial stenosis? I do think that it would help that as well. In fact, there are cases where this has happened. My friend, Dr. Sean O'Mara, actually has cases where he's actually shown this, where he's shown intracranial stenosis of the internal carotids actually open up, and the pretty sure various vessels in the brain as well. He showed that, the early workup, he had some stenosis in certain vessels, and then after a year on carnivore, sprinting, doing other sorts of things to improve your metabolic health, that they recede and go away, and all of a sudden they have these patent areas of vasculature, which is great. So yeah, I do think that. Do we have large published studies on the subject yet? No, we don't. But that's definitely the next step, is that we should do that. That's actually a good point. Maybe we should look at that. So stenosis resolution on carnivore study. I'm putting together a lot of cases and of multiple sclerosis, autoimmune diseases, etc. That congestive heart failure, those sorts of things, CHF, that have recovered on a carnivore diet. I mean, vertigo would be a good one too. But the actual blockages, that would be a big one. People check their I had one guy in my my group's Chip, who's spoken about it publicly here, has said that he had 100% blockage of his right carotid artery, and then 1 year on carnivore, all of a sudden it's patent again. It's starting to move blood again. So still a stroke risk, but it's going in the right direction, right? And so we get a lot of cases of those together and publish those. And hey, we're reversing atherosclerosis. You can show that. That's gonna shut a lot of people up and wake a lot of other people up too. So maybe that's a good idea for cases. So that being said, good call to action. If people have that and have experienced that, and they have documentation on imaging of their carotids opening up, or their coronary vessels opening up, or vessels in their head opening up and becoming more patent, and they have before and after shots. This is before carnivore, and then a year, 2 years, 5 years into carnivore. And what's the difference is, please do email me at anthonychaffee@gmail.com if you'd be willing to be part of a published case series, and let me know. That'd be great. It's the same with congestive heart failure. We were talking about that on 2 days ago at the last live, because that's something that's amazing. We're seeing more and more people that are approaching the need for a heart transplant and completely rearranging their whole life. Decades of slow progressive decline, and then a heart transplant, which helps obviously, but then you're just for a bag of other problems as well. They're all of a sudden having normal heart function after a couple months on a carnivore diet. Actually, I got to talk to a buddy of mine. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon in California. Should talk to him about that as well. You can probably see if he'd be interested in getting a little study going with his patients. That's a good idea. Okay, so if anybody else has congestive heart failure or anything like that, please do, and is willing to be part of a study or a case series. Everything would be anonymized, obviously. Please do email me at anthonychaffee@gmail.com and let me know that you'd be willing to do that. Great, thank you very much. David Voss, sorry, is thank you very much for the super chat. Can you share your thoughts on CTE? So CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I'm assuming that comes from this repetitive head injuries and concussions in different contexts. Sports, we see it in football more often, American football and rugby. So starting to happen as well. So why people are becoming more and more concerned about concussions during games and things like that. And a lot of people have had this destruction of their brains. It starts to atrophy, it starts to work differently. People get horribly depressed, and some people have committed suicide. Which is really sad. I even think like Junior Seau from the Chargers, he may have committed suicide, or I thought he was suffering from it. I can't remember if that was him or someone else around that same time. But either way, very sad, that people don't think that there's anything else they can do besides take their own life, because it's so damaging. So, can a carnivore diet help that? Who knows? But it has been shown that high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diets do help with post-concussive syndrome, and increasing creatine can help with post-concussive syndrome. And even a year down the line, as much as 60 grams of creatine taken daily for a week has been shown to improve symptoms of post-concussive syndrome. Ketogenic diets in general can help with traumatic brain injury and concussions. Being in ketosis when you have a concussion can significantly benefit, or potentially significantly benefit, your outcome, because you're reducing inflammation, and you also have high ketones, which directly suppress inflammation. And you have a post-concussion, you have a 48-hour window of inflammation where it actually gets worse, and you get more and more damage because of the inflammation secondary to the concussion. And so if you're in ketosis at the time and you have high ketones, that's going to suppress some of that neuroinflammation. You won't have as much damage, and it will hopefully recover more quickly. So as athletes, I think it's a very good idea to be in ketosis while you're playing, because if you get a concussion, you're going to recover from it much better. And, aside from all the advantages from having access to your fat stores and unlimited supply of energy nearly, and just feeling a lot better, that's protective against concussions as well. So, concussions are still damage to the brain. There's no getting around that. But being in ketosis and being on a carnivore diet can certainly help the recovery from brain injuries or concussions. Concussion is a brain injury. Let's not kid ourselves. Then it's very possible that this could help with CTE as well. I mean, there are people like Dave Mack, who I've had on my podcast. He had a stroke 30 years ago, and he had right-sided weakness the whole time. And he'd done keto, he'd done Atkins, and it was very stable in his weakness on his right side. Then he went carnivore, and in a couple months, he didn't have any weakness anymore. Not much to speak of anyway, slightly different, but nothing that you would notice. And so it's this massive, massive difference. And that came from dropping plants, not just being in ketosis. So, I do think it would help. I think it's well worth a shot. I mean, why the hell wouldn't you give it a try? I mean, nothing else is going to help. I mean, the alternatives are pretty bleak. So, definitely give it a try. And potentially, if you're in ketosis and on carnivore while you're an athlete, you won't get the extent of damage potentially either. So hopefully that helps. Question from Nat. Thank you very much for the super chat. How many hours before bed should you eat? I'm not too fussed about it. There are a lot of animals, carnivores in particular, that eat a lot of meat and then pass out for 14 hours. So I'm not too fussed with that. If you're eating carbohydrates, that spikes your insulin. That will block your growth hormone, and growth hormone maximally is secreted 2 hours after you go to sleep. And so, obviously that's not what you want to do, because that's a very important hormone. It's an important hormone throughout the day too, though. Men secrete growth hormone every hour, and women secrete it every 90 minutes anyway. And you have a big workout, or like a big leg day or big sprint session, you're going to secrete more growth hormone as well. And it's going to be curtailed by the carbohydrates. You're going to secrete less growth hormone, and it's going to be less active, because insulin blocks the action of growth hormone. So don't think that's a great idea. But and also melatonin can cause a bit of insulin resistance, and so when your blood sugar's up and your insulin's up, because you've just had a big carby meal and you go to bed and your melatonin goes up, that can actually compound things. So when you're just eating a carnivore diet, I don't think it's as much of an issue. So I don't have a problem with people going to bed straight away after they eat. Other people, think differently for various reasons, and that's fine. But I don't have much of a problem with it. Another question from Nav. Thank you, Nav, for the super chat. How would you know if you're not absorbing fat properly or have fat malabsorption? You'll get diarrhea, because if you're not absorbing fat, it has to be eliminated. And so as it gets eliminated, it's going to make things loose and runny. This is like back in the 90s, they had that stuff, the Olean chips with the fat called olestra, which is just a made up fat, but you couldn't absorb it. It was too big, and we didn't have the machinery to break it down and absorb it. And so it tasted like fat. Ooh, you got that good fatty taste, but you couldn't absorb it. Great. Win-win. Except that you don't absorb it. And so it has to go out. And so where does it go? It goes out. And so people were getting like diarrhea, and they were having accidents, and they were getting, it was just a time of life. You just couldn't trust a fart. It was just like, this is going to be a disaster. And so they ended up having to put a disclaimer on these chips that said, and this was just the death knell for them. They didn't last long after this. At the bottom, they had to say, may cause anal leakage. As soon as people saw that, they're like, excuse me? Anal leakage? No, thank you. Not buying that garbage. And it went away, but that's what that's from. So that's fat malabsorption. That means you're not absorbing fat, and you're going to get anal leakage. And so if you have normal stools, you're absorbing fat just fine. Savine, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Dr. Chaffee. What are the chances that doctors purposely misdiagnose a patient with T2 diabetic for T1 as a way to keep them on an insulin shot? I think it'd be pretty unlikely, because if they're doing that purposefully, that's malpractice. And so, malpractice is when you do the wrong thing and it causes harm. And if you're putting someone as a type 2 and you're saying, no, you're a type 1, and so they're putting on insulin, you can cause hypos. If you don't have a hypo, then there's no harm done. But if they're intentionally doing that, that's a different story. And so, that they could lose their license for that, really. So I think that it would probably be less likely they would do that. I'm sure people are capable of that, because doctors are just people at the end of the day, and some people are assholes, and they exist. There's like that it was an interesting podcast called Dr. Death, and they made a little TV movie out of it with like Alec Baldwin and Christian Slater. It was good to see him come out of hiding, because he's a good actor. I always liked Christian Slater. About this neurosurgeon that really sucked and really hadn't done any surgeries. He was an MD PhD, and then he just did these always just doing research and never actually operated. And so now he's a qualified neurosurgeon, and dude had never operated, but now that's his job, is operating. And he was just butchering people, and he was killing people and crippling them. And they finally got him off the streets. But he was maybe just out of his mind and just didn't realize just how terrible he was. But he was very clear he was hurting people. And then the second season of Dr. Death was this oncologist who was falsely diagnosing people with cancer so he could put them on really expensive chemo that he was getting big cuts from, because apparently people, oncologists get a big cut from the chemo. And it's expensive chemo. And so he was basically diagnosing everybody with cancer, putting them all on chemo, and putting them on higher levels of chemo, way higher levels of chemo than they actually should be on, and people were dying. And he was doing that so he could just charge money and make money and money and money. He was just printing money off of people's sickness and death. And it was just disgusting. So those people do exist, but then they end up on a show like Dr. Death. And so hopefully that's, the reason that we look at this and go like, wow, that's crazy, is because it is so rare. Could someone have done that purposefully? Yes, they could have. I wouldn't, first go there though. I'd probably, maybe them just incompetence, they just messed up. But it's pretty easy. I mean, you just test your insulin. If you have insulin, you don't have type 1 diabetes. And if you have lower and lower insulin, and, there's other sort of ways of testing, like how much insulin you're producing. And if you have super low insulin, but your blood sugar is really high, well, you're obviously not making enough insulin for your body's demands. And so that could be on your way to, full, complete type 1 diabetes. So who knows, maybe they thought there was some sort of picture there, but, it's hopefully not. I don't think it would be very common though, or very likely. So, but it could happen. But it is common enough that people mess up and get the wrong diagnosis. Doing that intentionally is less common. So yeah, hopefully that's not the case in whatever circumstance you're sort of thinking about here. NJ Marino, thank you very much for the super chat. Are you familiar with prions? Are they actually proven contagious? Prions are a bit contentious. They're proteins that basically they act like the Borg from Star Trek. It's like these proteins are a weird shaped protein that go to other proteins and turn those proteins into more of themselves. But it's not considered a form of life. It's just a protein, but they can replicate, but they can't, they can turn other things into them, but they can't reproduce themselves, right? So who knows? But so they're not considered a full form of life, but they're a kind of life. And but there's been some contention on there's some contention on if prions are actually the cause of certain diseases. So I don't think it's settled on what exactly they are and what they do, or if they're proven contagious. The thing is though, there have been people studying things like mad cow disease and with large herds of animals, and their contention was that this was actually a toxin. They were being given too much of this sort of medicine that fought these little weevils that would sort of like burrow into a cow's hide and make these big scars. And so they, the UK government said, okay, we'll give them whatever treatment it was for this, but in much higher doses to sort of wipe these things out. And so everyone was required to use that to wipe out this little infestation. But then mad cow sparked up right after that. So, okay, so that could be a prion, and they were like, oh, okay, well, we're feeding the nervous tissue of these cows and things like that to other cows and feedlots because it's actually good nutrition, and animal-based nutrition is good even for herbivores. And then we're getting mad cows. So like, oh, okay, wow, there's this prion and it's spreading out between these people, between these different cows. The idea that they just eat more meat and brains, that's going to turn into mad cow disease is garbage. The argument was that it was a prion. So if there's a prion in the nervous tissue and another cow eats that nervous tissue, then they get that. But then how does that spread between cows if it has to come from consuming the nervous tissue? That's not really ever been shown. But then there was a researcher that had a whole herd of cows and didn't give them that chemical, treatment for these little weevils, and was just checking them. And he was actually feeding them the nervous tissue and brains and spinal cords of cows that had diagnosed mad cow disease, that confirmed died of mad cow disease. couldn't pass it on. So there's a contention on whether that was a prion at all. That wasn't published because, unfortunately, he and the veterinarian and the member of parliament in the UK all unfortunately died in mysterious and unfortunate car accidents. And so, but the study was done, and I've spoken to people who were involved in it and who still have the research. Crazy enough. But no, I don't think it has been proven at all. That's the assertion. But again, the majority of things in medicine are based on assertions that have just not had a competing theory come up for so long that that theory and just conjecture becomes the accepted dogma and the accepted cause. And so because people have just been saying this about prions for so long, and there's no competing theory, it's just been accepted as true, even though it hasn't been proven as true. It's just been sort of defaulted as true. So yeah, maybe some prions. I mean, we sort of see that relationship. We see prions get into something. You see those sort of grow and multiply. Is that because the prions are making other prions, or some other sort of disease process that's turning everything into these things we call prions? I don't know, but I don't know that we have robust evidence on that. And certainly some things that we call a prion disease, like mad cow disease, may or may not be actually from that. But again, we don't know one way or the other. And I guess that's the point that you're trying to make, is we don't know one way or the other. So superfluity of naughtiness. Thank you very much for the super chat. I'm gradually increasing my meat, but still eating carbs and crap. It is an all or nothing type of thing towards improvement of health and well-being. No, it's not all or nothing. If you're just eating more meat, then yes, that's good. I spoke with a lady yesterday, Valerie Smith, who recovered from decades of anorexia and schizophrenia and depression, and all these other sorts of very difficult health conditions by going carnivore. But it was a slow process for her. She had to convince herself just to try one bite of meat a day for a week. And if she could do that and she felt okay, she'd go to 2 bites and then 3 bites and then 4 bites week after week. And at first she was actually like crying and sobbing for hours at the table before she could do it or bring herself to do it. And after she did it, so it's very serious sort of condition, anorexia. It's a very serious mental health issue. It's actually the most, has the highest mortality rate of any mental health condition, schizophrenia. It's a 1 in 5, 20% of people who get anorexia die. So it's a very, very serious mental health issue. It's not they have a preference and they just want to be skinny. It's a serious mental health issue. And like we treat other mental health issues now with like schizophrenia and diabetes or dementia, depression, OCD, bipolar. She had OCD and those things as well. We're treating those with ketogenic carnivore diets and improving. And so she did that. She ended up improving, and the voices started going away too. And she had to do it in a slow, gradual way, right? So that's okay. You're still getting nutrients. Meat has all the nutrients and nutrition that you need. So that's really good. It's good that you're eating that, and you're eating crap too. Okay, that's all right. But the more meat you eat, that's gonna start moving out and boxing out some of the crap, because you're just not going to be as hungry. You're going to be more satisfied. You're going to have more nutrients, and your body's going to feel better. You're not going to want all that crap anymore. So do keep increasing the meat. Try to cut out the high octane crap. Try to go to more whole foods, even if it has carbs. But just get out the junk food and the highly processed, ultra processed things that have a laundry list of ingredients that are not in any language, known to modern man. It's just all chemical names and things like that, and brand new names for brand new chemicals that have never existed 100 years ago or beyond, or never existed in nature anyway. So eating more meat is great. Eating more fat is great. And then just slowly trying to get all the rest of the crap out of there. You're definitely going to improve. And the more of this stuff you get rid of, the better you're going to be, because it does cause harm. The meat is beneficial. It causes benefit. And so eating more of it is beneficial, but eating other things cause harm. And so reducing that will cause benefit. So just keep that in mind, and just keep going. See how you feel. I'm sure you'll do great. Julie Halabi, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Dr. Chaffee. My friend has alopecia, and I was telling her about the lion diet. Have you ever heard of lion diet curing this? Thank you. Yes, absolutely. It depends on how damaged the hair follicles are. So alopecia, you lose hair when you're not supposed to, and eventually, you can damage the hair follicles to the extent that they die, and that at that point they're not coming back, but they can still fall out and not regrow when they're still alive. They're just dormant. They're just not healthy enough to regrow hair. And so when you fix the problem underlying, and they can actually get better and healthier, and they actually start having more hair regrow, but it can at least stop the underlying process of alopecia. Some of the alopecia can be autoimmune in nature, and so that can definitely stuff up any autoimmune issue and reduce your antibodies towards your own body, and you stop the damage to your own body. Now you can have permanent damage from what's already happened with your autoimmunity, but whatever's temporary and whatever can heal, and you at least stop the process of the autoimmune attacks on your body, and so that can address the underlying cause of alopecia as well. It depends on what's causing alopecia. There are other things that cause alopecia as well, but they can definitely address many of the causes of that. So yeah, it's definitely worth a try, and she'll improve in so many other ways too, that it'd be way worth it. Sometimes people are losing hair, they're doing these things, oh my God, it's not working, or it's making it worse. And then all of a sudden, 4 months, 5 months down the road, they start seeing these little hairs growing in. They're like, oh, look at that. Or their hairstylist or something like that may say, like, actually, you have a lot of hairs growing in here, little tiny ones that you may not see in the mirror. And so just to keep that in mind, that when you're a woman, you have long hair, and you're just seeing it get thinner and thinner, and you're feeling it's like, oh, this is getting worse and worse. That can be very concerning. And it takes years to grow that hair back out, as long as the rest of your hair. So it's sometimes you don't see the benefits for a while, but keep an eye out for it. And yes, it can absolutely help. Here's a nice comment from Simon or Simmons RC. 143 days strict carnivore, but who's counting? 40 pounds down and so many health issues gone. Thank you, Dr. Chaffee. That's great. Really glad to hear that, Simmons. That's amazing. This one from My Creative Angel. Hello, Dr. Chaffee. Carnivore Ron here from the Philippines. Professor Seefried said that glutamine is one of the cancer foods aside from glucose, and animal foods are high in glutamine. Should I worry? Plant foods are high in glutamine too, and you make glutamine. So that's the thing. So you can't avoid glutamine. It's ubiquitous. You get proteins from plants, you're going to get glutamine. Get protein from animals, you're going to get glutamine. This is why fasting can potentially increase, have increased benefit in the case of cancer on top of a carnivore diet. I think the vast majority of benefit you get from fasting comes from just not eating the wrong things. But specifically in cancer, I think it could also be that you're going to be limiting out more of the glutamine as well. And that's just an idea I've had, but it would make sense from that standpoint. Different cancers rely more or less on glutamine, and so some don't really take up much glutamine at all. So it's sort of a moot point. Others take up a lot, such as GBM, glioblastoma brain cancer. It's more important in those cancers, right? So it depends on what kind of cancer you have too. But even ketogenic carnivore diets with GBM that takes about 75% of its energy from glutamine significantly improves when people go on ketogenic diets like carnivore diet. even though there's glutamine in meat. Other thing to remember is that glutamine is denatured by heat. So you cook meat, it will denature the glutamine. I don't know the exact temperature that denatures glutamine. So I don't know if it has to be well done or medium rare is enough or medium well, but heat does denature glutamine. Maybe someone can look that up and share with the class. But you do that. But this is why Professor Seyfried also champions the use of glutamine disruptors. This is why some people are saying that cancer is not actually cancer. It's a parasite infection, and that's because you give people parasite medications, and it helps, and the cancers recede. Well, maybe, but when we look at cancers under the microscope and we look in the cells, we don't really see. Well, at least it has never been reported that I'm aware of that people have seen parasites in the cells or in those clusters of cells, etc. We don't see that. You look at every cancer under the microscope. That's how you diagnose cancer. It's not just by looking at someone or seeing it on a scan. You have to get it cut up on a slide under a microscope. That's how cancer is diagnosed in all cases. So we don't see parasites as of yet. But interestingly, parasites require a lot of glutamine. And so one of the great ways of disrupting parasite action in your body is to block glutamine. And so you give them medications that block glutamine, like fenbendazole or mebendazole. There's Dawn that was used as actually a chemotherapy agent in, was it leukemia or lymphoma? And same thing, blocks glutamine metabolism in the cells. And now the cancer cells can't use glutamine. Cancer cells die. And so that's what some people, Professor Seyfried talks about this. And so there's different protocols that utilize fenbendazole or mebendazole. Dawn, when you can get it. Not everybody can. It's you have to get that prescribed, preferably from an oncologist. But I think some places are starting to use this now. I think in Canada, there's a place in Vancouver. I don't know the name of it, but I think it's the Hippocrates Institute or something like that. They might be starting to use that now, but don't quote me on that. I just sort of a vague memory of that. But either way, plants have glutamine, animals have glutamine. Cooking gets rid of it. Fasting doesn't even bring it in the first place. And different medications can block its utilization in the body because you make it yourself, just like you make glucose. And so things like metformin, lowering your glucose and raising your ketones even more, can potentially help in the ketogenic metabolic therapy as well. So all of these things come into play. But you're right, you need to consider glutamine as well. Freedom, thank you very much for the super chat. Looks like the question is down below. Freedom says, hi, Anthony. Thank you. Or can you speak about what to include in your diet, or about what you include in your diet now? Elle's Instagram shows varieties of meats, dairy, etc. are included. You previously mentioned you eat beef, water, and salt to taste. Yeah, I still do that. And I don't even really use salt anymore. It's just really beef and water. I do eat other meats, mostly other red meats like lamb. Oh, hey, buddy. And I don't do much dairy. I may have some cheese melted onto some meat, or some burger patties and with some cheese melted in between them, or a cheesy omelet or something like that. But that's pretty rare. Elle likes making these different recipes, but that's not like what we eat every day. They're just sort of fun recipes that she likes to make and that she likes to put out, and that people seem to have fun with. So I do think that it's definitely still best to stick with meat and water and not do a lot of dairy. If you're going to use dairy, remember, just use it as a condiment with meat. Meat is a meal. Dairy goes on the meat, but it's not instead of the meat. And it can have casomorphines, which can cause you to overeat, can disrupt your hunger signal so that you eat more. So you want to eat more, so you overeat. And that's important when you're a baby and your body's, and you need to be encouraged to get your weight up quickly so that you're not as much of a threat, or you're not as much of a target from predators. But as soon as you get weaned off that and you start getting to adulthood, then it's just going to disrupt your hunger signals and you're just going to overeat. And they used to give skim milk and grains to pigs back in the day. And there's a paper I saw in the 1930s talking about how this is a great way to increase the poundage of your pigs and get more lard out of them, because that was a big part of pig production was making lard. Was give them grains and skim milk, which is a byproduct of the cream and butter industry. It was like a throwaway product. And they would give that to them, and they found that the combination of grains and the skim milk would actually cause them to overeat more than just those items on their own. Grains are going to make you overeat because they're going to raise your insulin. Insulin's going to block leptin, which is your satiety hormone. So you're not going to realize that you're done eating, and you're going to feel more hungry. It's also going to drop your blood sugar eventually because your insulin stays up and blood sugar goes down. That's why insulin stays up, in order to make blood sugar go down. And then you're hungry and you feel crappy and you want to go eat something. And then the milk has carbs as well, so it's going to compound that. And it also has casomorphins, which cause you to overeat. So they found the combination of grains and milk, which is really just cereal and milk, right, was actually a great way to cause the pigs to overconsume and to intentionally fatten them up. So now what are we doing? We're telling kids, eat healthy grains and skim milk. Ooh, it's great. It's like, we've been doing that for years, decades, maybe even centuries, intentionally to fatten up pigs. Now we're the fat pigs, and our obesity rate has gone through the roof. So why avoid that? And I don't eat dairy very often. If you're trying to lose body fat, I would avoid dairy. And if you're just eating meat and you're only drinking water, you can listen to your body's hunger signals. You just eat until fatty meat stops tasting good. You add in some carbs, you add in some vegetables with lectins that act as insulin in your body. You eat that with dairy that has casomorphins. You're not going to be able to listen to your body's signals. You're going to overeat unless you're intentionally restricting. So not a good idea. We do those recipes for fun. She just does those for fun. It's not because we eat those on a daily basis. It's just sort of fun recipe ideas. The vast majority of what I eat, certainly, is just meat and water, mostly beef and water. And that's the majority of what Elle eats as well. But she does like adding in a bit of sort of dairy and fun little recipes as well. I'm less so. I'll eat them, because she made them and because she did a nice thing and made dinner. But she doesn't really make those that often. If she wants me to be in the video with it, I don't mind. I'll have a couple bites of this stuff. But no, the majority of what I eat is just meat and water. Mostly beef and water. Jason's Works, thank you very much for the very generous super chat. Would love to get your thoughts on fat-free mass index calculators, measuring your ankle and wrist diameter and height for the amount of muscle your frame can handle. That's an interesting concept. I haven't looked into those. That's very interesting. Something that would be interesting. It's if you're looking to put on muscle naturally and so how big can I get naturally, it might be interesting. If you just eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good and you work out really hard, you'll put on muscle more easily than you ever have in your life. And you keep doing that, you're going to get to a natural point that your body's just sort of maintaining that. And if you're able to work out more and push yourself more, and eat more, you'll get more. And there will be sort of a balance point. For me, it was 240 pounds, and that's where I can comfortably eat twice a day and work out for an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and 4 days a week. And that's where my body maintains 240 pounds, around 6% body fat. And I feel great. I feel great doing that. If I were able to work out more and eat more, I would probably put on more muscle, but I'm not too worried about it. and I don't have the time. So, it might come to a point where I'm not working 14 to 16-hour days and 7 days a week, and not traveling internationally literally every month this year for a medical conference to speak at. And I might actually have time to actually work out and play sports again. But now is not that time. And so, for practical purposes, I just think you just work out as hard as you can, eat as much fatty meat as your body is asking you for, and just see what happens. I'm not too familiar with those calculators, though, but that's interesting. I think a lot of those calculators, they give you sort of a rough guide, but most of them just don't have all the variables to take everything into consideration. And so it can be possibly generally applicable to a lot of people, but there's going to be outliers. And so just work out hard, eat a lot of meat, and make yourself be one of those outliers. And that's what I do. Might be interesting, though. It'd be kind of cool to check mine, because when I was younger, I was quite skinny. Not like horribly emaciated skinny, but I was very slender. Just a skinny teenager, and then I just started, lifting weights and working out more, and I just started putting on weight slowly but surely. And then I went carnivore when I was 20, and just really started putting on a lot of lean body mass and lean muscle mass, and started getting stronger and stronger and more and more muscular. I think at one point when I was 23, 24, I was freaking jacked, and I'd been carnivore for like 4 years, and like my life was working out and playing rugby and doing a bit of school on the side for some of that. But majority of that time I was just full-time playing rugby, and I was a moose. I remember seeing a picture, and I sort of was turning around like that, and sort of my shoulders sort of shrugged up like that, and I was like, oh my God, it was like a bull's neck. And so I don't know if that's just how my frame works. I don't know if that would fit in with that calculator, but I get pretty big. And then when I was off of that and just eating sort of whatever, I think my heaviest I got to was like around 270. Most of that was muscle, but definitely had a layer of fat on that. And then when I went back on carnivore and just started lifting weights and playing rugby again, it was it was down to like 240, 245, just usually around 6% body fat. I don't know. It'd be interesting to check out one of those calculators. Maybe send one of those on, and I'll try and check it out and see if that lines up. And it just says 245, rip badass for my measurements. Be like, well, okay, pretty accurate. But otherwise, I don't really know. Sorry about that. Question from Pilot Obet. Does carnivore help with EBPH or prostate issues? Just lost a friend. Oh, sorry to hear that. To prostate cancer recently. It does, in fact, help with benign prostatic hypertrophy and other prostate issues. My friend, Professor Ben Bickman, wrote a book called Why We Get Sick, and talks a lot about insulin resistance and how this contributes to so many different diseases. Actually, I made a note to myself. And that actually reminded me of something else. Sorry about that. And he talks about how insulin resistance is tied up with the prostate, and how insulin is an anabolic hormone. And so it causes certain tissues to grow, and prostate being one of them. And so you get rid of that, and your insulin comes down, your prostate goes down as well. And so that can help also. And then just cancer in general is improved dramatically by ketogenic diets like a carnivore diet, because of mitochondrial benefit and function. When you have improved mitochondria, and healthy mitochondria, you don't get cancer. You really can't get cancer. That's been shown in lab trials, transferring mitochondria and DNA to and from cancer cells. They find that healthy mitochondria suppress cancers, and damaged mitochondria put in healthy cells cause cancer. But the nucleus, the DNA being transferred to a healthy cell with healthy mitochondria doesn't behave as cancer. You can actually clone them into mice and frogs and things like that. I think they use in the experiment. So it can certainly help with any cancer, I think, due to those principles of the Warburg effect, that you're limiting out the amount of glucose that's available, and cancer cells require 400 times the amount of glucose as normal cells. So that's a big one right there. And then you're going to be improving mitochondrial health. 3-4 months on a ketogenic carnivore diet, you're going to have 4 times the number of mitochondria, and they're 4 times as effective. And so you're not going to be able to get cancer because you have healthy mitochondria. So I do think it would help quite a lot. And so good luck with that. Sorry about your friend. Gunther SB, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. I appreciate it. Hi, Gunther says, hi, I passed 90 days on line diet. Great job. Mostly 100% grass-fed beef, salted taste, 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio in grams, 2 meals a day. Still have low energy, especially a few hours after meals, same as before carnivore. What might I be doing wrong? Well, first of all, if you're getting tired after eating meals, maybe you're eating too much during the day. Maybe eat smaller amounts. If you're eating your main meal at night, you just eat a whole bunch of fatty meat at night and you get lethargic, good. Go to bed. It's time for it anyway. I noticed that too. You're going into a rest and digest mode. You're dedicating a lot of blood and to your intestines to absorb, break down, and utilize those nutrients that you just ate. And so that's blood that's not available to your body and your brain. You're going to get tired. You're going into a rest and digest mode, turning your parasympathetics as opposed to your sympathetics, and you're going to chill out. And your body's going to tell you to chill out because it doesn't want you going around wasting energy. You got the energy, you got the food, now relax. Take it easy, rebuild, repair, and get ready to do it tomorrow because every day is a grind, right? So that's pretty typical that you'll get tired after you work out, after you eat, especially if you eat a lot. So if you're eating during the day, I'd eat sort of a half meal, half as much as you want, and see how that goes. Don't eat so much that you get tired. And there should be an amount that you just have a bit and you take the edge off and you feel better, but you're not lethargic. You're not doing it to the point that you're lethargic. Then, if you have low energy in general, you're probably still keto adapting and fat adapting. And that actually takes months and months and months. And there are some people to do it fully. Now, most people get better energy within the first couple of weeks, or after the first few weeks. But not everybody does. And there are a number of people that have gone to the 3-month mark and just really had poor energy the whole time. And then eventually something clicks and they get their energy back. So a lot of people get that about where you're at now, about the 3-month mark. More people, obviously get it done earlier, but of the people that are sort of holdovers, a lot of people click over at about 3 months. I have seen a couple of people take as long as 6 months. And obviously that's not where you want to be. But the good news is for them, it did come and they had amazing energy after that. If it's taking this long, you have to wonder if you have some sort of nutritional deficiency or hormonal imbalance. Like maybe you have a thyroid problem, maybe you're hypothyroid, and it's going to take longer than this for your thyroid to heal, and you just may need to be on some thyroid support. If you have a damaged thyroid from everything before, and if you have low B12, those sorts of things. Like if you have a malabsorption issue and you can't really absorb B12 very well, then even though you're getting more nutrient dense food that has way more B12, in fact, meat is the only, animal products are the only source of naturally occurring B12 in our diets, right? You can't get it from plants. Go suck on an algae bed if you want to, but you get poisoned from the algae and the swamp water as well. So that's not a really good option. But you're going to be getting more B12, so your B12 should be getting better. But if you have a malabsorption issue or pernicious anemia or something like that, or whatever, there could be some reason why you're not optimal. So check your bloods, check your thyroid, you can check other hormones and check your B12 and folate, things like that. Maybe you have MTHFR. Maybe you just need a bit more B12 and folate, so you need to add in some liver. Or maybe when you add in liver, after a few weeks, you catch up with all these vitamins, you start feeling better. So have those thoughts in mind if it's taking 3 months, 6 months to feel better. Just check your bloods as well. I mean, I catch these things early on in my patient population because I check their bloods first thing they do. They walk in the door and we talk about all their problems, and I get a big, full, deep set of blood tests for them. And then we go from there. And then I check their bloods again in a couple of months. If there's problems with their B12, I'm checking it for pernicious anemia, and it shows up. I actually have diagnosed a number of cases of pernicious anemia long before they've completely lost the ability to absorb B12. But of course, you want to catch it before then. You want to stop it before it's a disaster. And then they're dependent on B12 shots for the rest of their life, or they die. When I see that and I'm seeing them, they're eating meat, they're eating liver, I've given them a shot and then another shot, and their B12 goes up and then it comes right down. It goes up and it comes down. It goes up and it just keeps coming down. It's like, all right, well, you're obviously getting enough and eating meat and liver. There's clearly a problem. You check them for pernicious anemia. Lo and behold, they have it. And then you just know, okay, well, you need, sublingual B12, or injections regularly, and all of a sudden they just feel amazing. So it could be something like that too. So just, make sure that you are, not missing something like that. Striker fam, thank you for the super chat. Looks like question down here is, how much fat on the ribeye should I leave on? 1/8 of an inch or less. Thanks for all you do, doc. I'd leave it all on. I'd just leave every scrap of fat on there. A ribeye, depending on how it's trimmed, is typically 1 gram of fat to 1 gram of protein. So the more the merrier. You want to be above 1 gram of fat to 1 gram of protein. And depending on the person, depending on their physiological demands. And so, leave it all on. Don't trim it off. Don't let them trim it off. Go to your butcher and say, I want these cuts. I want you to trim no fat off. And that will be much better. Yeah, you want the fattiest stuff that you can get. Iggy Pop, thank you very much for the super chat. Doc, what are your thoughts on supposedly in Europe food quality is better than the rest of the world? Could you please expand on statins being prescribed for people that may have suffered heart ailments? So as far as food in Europe being better than the rest of the world, it's referring to processed foods. So it's processed bullshit, junk foods. Europe and other countries like Canada and elsewhere don't allow certain nasty additives and miserable ingredients to go in there. Sorry. And so, it's, sorry, come back to, where did I go? There we go. And so it's really referring to that. So you look at like the ingredients for like ketchup in America, it's got like 30 different ingredients. None of them are intelligible. And then you look at in Europe or Canada, there's 5. It's just like normal ingredients, So it's generally referring to the processed food. It's not like meat and things like that. And depending on how the meat is prepared, there's a lot of places in Europe that do like regenerative farming, like England. Like a lot of their farms are regenerative farms, so that meat's going to be very, very good quality meat. The problem is when it gets to the butcher and they trim every goddamn scrap of fat off of it and then inject it with water so that it has more poundage. And they tip the scales. It was just like back in the day, they used to use fake weights and they said, oh yeah, this is 2 pounds. It's like, no, it's not. It's like, it's just 3/4 of a pound. So they could give you short weight and, or injecting meat with a bunch of water. Well, water has weight and you're charging people $30 a pound for that water. When I was in England, when I first went there, this really pisses off people in England, but it's true. When I bought beef just from, Sainsbury, the grocery stores there, and I was trying to cook steak, I could not get them to brown. It was just like water and steam were just coming out of these things. It was like trying to fry up a wet dish rag. It just didn't work. And like, it wouldn't brown. I could not get it to brown. It was just gray. I'm like checking, like, what the hell? And, like flip it, and then it was just gray, and it was never brown. It was just gray and sweaty. And we cooked all the way through. So we well done, tastes like garbage, and wouldn't brown. Like, what the hell is going on? What's wrong with the meat in England? They inject water into it, at least in those places. And so then they ruin it. But the quality of meat as a regeneratively farmed meat, and not trimming off all the damn fat people, seriously, is great. So those are good. But you get regenerative farms in America too. So, then you can go to Sainsbury and get that bullshit where they inject a bunch of water in it. You can get that same stuff from Safeway, except I've never seen things cook like that. I've never seen the amount of water in American meat, but that's where it's coming from. It's really what that's referring to is the processed food, is because they don't allow certain ingredients. Like there's a lot of ingredients, artificial ingredients in America that you're allowed to put in food that are toxic, and other countries recognize them as toxic, and they say, no, you're not allowed to use these things in food. These aren't safe for consumption, but they're considered safe for consumption in America. So that's what that's referring to. You don't eat junk food. You don't eat processed food. It's not going to matter. Pilot Obet, thank you very much for the super chat. It's very kind of you. Is that not seeing a question attached, but maybe if you wanted to do one, put that on there. But your question didn't attach, unfortunately. Here's one that's good from Barry Odom. The carnivore diet saved my life. Off all medications, lost 170 pounds. Well, that's amazing. That's really great, Barry. Congratulations, and really glad to hear that you're doing so well. That's awesome. 170 pounds. It's massive. That's an entire person. And that must feel, you're just giving somebody a piggyback ride, all day, every day, getting that off your shoulders is, it's a huge weight off your back, as the saying goes. So that's really great. Really good to see. Really good to see that. Thanks for sharing that, Barry. Bold Carnivore, good to see you, buddy. Thank you for the super chat. You didn't have to do that. Hey, brother, congratulations on the engagement. Can't wait to catch up about our next video. Yeah, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And things have been pretty go recently. Very busy, a lot of stuff happening, but it's also exciting. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. God of War, thank you very much for the super chat. Is 5 eggs every day for breakfast, considering the high cholesterol associated with eggs? Or is that healthy, considering the high cholesterol in eggs? Yeah, it's perfectly healthy. It's even accepted by, the American Heart Association, etc., that dietary cholesterol actually doesn't affect your serum cholesterol. And also, serum cholesterol does not cause, and never will cause, has never caused, and will never cause heart disease or diabetes or cancer or anything else. And when people say, well, what if it gets really high? Well, it's still not going to cause heart disease, because it does not cause heart disease, and so, it says, okay, does water, cause your leg to fall off? No, it doesn't. Well, what if you drink like 2 gallons? Still no, that's just not something that water does. Or, it's just, these are not associated phenomena, right? It doesn't matter how high your cholesterol goes. It's not going to cause heart disease, because it's not a cause of heart disease. Eggs are great. The amount of cholesterol that you eat isn't really going to appreciably change the amount of cholesterol in your system. So don't worry about that. And also just don't worry about cholesterol. It's not the problem. Sugar's a problem. Seed oil's a problem. Alcohol's a problem. Smoking's a problem. Plants are a problem. All those things I named there, they're all plants. They're all from plants. and the inflammation and damage that you get from plants and all these artificial ingredients that don't exist anywhere in nature. Those are the things you want to avoid. Meat and eggs, we've been eating those as long as humans have been humans, and they haven't caused a problem yet. Why the hell would they be causing a problem now? So go to town on eggs. Tanya T, thank you for the super chat. In Bali, no high quality beef, only chicken, eggs, and pork. Any recommendations? Well, you can get beef there. It's just expensive, but it's typically shipped up from Australia. So all the beef that I got there was all Australian beef, which is fine. It's just expensive. But if you don't have access to that, just go for eggs and chicken. At least eggs anyway. Those can be very high quality. A lot of those things are just out in the jungle. I see a lot of those, jungle birds going around, picking at things and then coming back and laying eggs. So those are going to be super, super nutritious eggs. The pig, I guess it depends on how they raise them. I don't know where they get their pork from. But if they're raising them locally and just eating real food, then probably fine. If they're getting it shipped in from China, those big nasty factory farms, probably not fine. But you can get beef. You can absolutely get beef, and eggs are fantastic. And if you're getting high quality, pasture raised, just jungle bird eggs, those are great. You can live on those, no problem, and do just fine. I think there's another part of that here from Tanya. It says, further to my super chat above, living in Bali from Canada, carnivore healing colitis, which is great, by grass-fed butter and bottled pork and beef fat. Okay, beef fat, like bottled pork, to use in cooking, as beef and bacon here is very lean. Yeah, that makes sense. Everything is just so stupid lean. Is ridiculous. But you can try to talk to butchers there and just say, hey, look, I want really fatty meat. I want really fatty beef. But adding in grass-fed butter and grass-fed beef tallow is a really good idea. And you can get beef. It's generally shipped up from Australia. It's relatively expensive, as compared to everything else that's sourced locally in Bali. But it is pretty comparable to how expensive, to the price of beef in Australia. So it's, which is a bit annoying, when you're going there, from Australia, and you're like, oh, great, everything's cheap, except that it isn't. And so, it's about the same prices, but at the same time, it's about the same prices. So, that's at least something anyway. Okay, it looks like there's another, let me just do this here. I'll just read this here from Pilot Obet. It was just sent to me in sort of a private chat. His question from a super chat. Thanks for my super chat. For the second one, I didn't get a question to it. Can you say something about sarcoidosis and carnivore? As a question, does that help? Well, again, this is another interesting one. I've seen a number of people with sarcoidosis resolve it. They had widespread systemic sarcoidosis, or neurosarcoidosis, and different horrible sarcoid buildup and lesions, and they resolved completely and totally in those cases. So that's another one too. Anyone who has recovered from sarcoidosis, please comment here and let people know that. And if you're interested in being part of a published case series on these amazing things that carnivore people are healing, please do email me at anthonychaffee@gmail.com. It's something that we need to know more about. Sarcoidosis is devastating disease. We have basically no good treatments for it. We're just chasing our tails with it, just like we are with cancer and autoimmunity and so many other things, diabetes, etc. And this has helped. And so I hope it's one that will, turn out to be helpful in all cases. and actually address the underlying cause of the sarcoidosis. We don't know that yet, but we do know that there are several people that have reported complete resolutions of their sarcoidosis just by going on a carnivore diet. Amazing. So if you are one of those amazing people, please do let us know in the comments, and please do email me at anthonychaffee@gmail.com. That's just Anthony spelled normally, Anthony, Chaffee spelled CHAFF as in Frank, double E as in Edward. So 2 F's and 2 E's. And let me know if you'd like to be part of that, because that would be amazing too. And I'll write that down. Yep, perfect. Great. Thanks for that. Mitch, thank you for the super chat. Get a second and third opinion. I don't know if that was a continuation of something from something else, but thank you for the super chat anyway. And if there's more to that, then just please leave it in the comments. I'll try to grab it. Nav, thank you for the super chat. Again, it's very nice of you. As a carnivore, wouldn't sleeping right after eating cause heartburn? It could in some people. It depends on how patent your inferior sphincter is, that connection between your esophagus and your stomach. If that's possible to, if that's sort of a little patent. Hey, buddy. Come here, buddy. Come here, little guy. If that's able to close off, then you won't have a problem. People sleeping on their, one side versus the other, sometimes they have more heartburn or stomach issues. But, if you find that you get heartburn straight after eating, then, don't do that. That's fine. I don't have a problem with it. And a lot of people are fine with it too. But if you suffer with heartburn, and you get that worse after you eat, then yeah, take it easy and sit up for a bit and don't be recumbent straight away. Okay, this is my sister being howdy. The amount of crap he gave me for watching Star Trek, and now he's making Borg references. People understand the Borg. It's a very apt reference, and not many other things that relates to. And yes, I gave you crap for watching Star Trek, but I gave you crap for watching the stupid Star Treks, like like Deep Space Nine and Voyager and all those just wretched versions. The original was it's pretty corny, but it was fun too. But Next Generation, that was good. That was fine. Watch that. Don't waste your time on the other stupid ones. That's what I gave you. And I really gave you shit for Babylon 5. That was awful. That was such a bad show. And so, yes, I did give you a hard time for that, but it wasn't just Star Trek in general for the sake of Star Trek. It was those specific and worse examples of Star Trek and Babylon 5. Because come on, Babylon 5 sucked. Okay, so here's a question from Tiago Napoli. Says, hi, Doc, any tips on how to get the elderly to join carnivore? My mom is in her 70s and actually thinks it is making her sick. Certainly, and that's the thing is that you have to get over that conditioned response. You get psychosomatic reactions when you're like, oh, that's bad for me, that's bad for me, that's bad for me. You can actually make yourself physically ill. When you eat that, you can become, turn your stomach and all that sort of stuff. So you have to be careful about that. It's just education. Just understanding like actually fat's not bad for me. The meat's not bad for me. It's not going to hurt me. It's going to make me better. You look at the actual Mediterranean diet, it was a lot of meat, a lot of fish, and these sorts of things were really helpful and really beneficial. And sometimes the older generations can remember that. What did your grandparents eat when you were a young girl? What did they eat? Oh shit, they ate a lot of meat and fish. And what did their parents eat when they grew up? Oh, okay. If they could afford it, it was meat. And so, you can try that and see how it goes. But it's just about education and deconditioning these things. And you can decondition these things, but it takes some time, and you just sort of understanding meat's not bad, fat's not bad, plants are. They have toxins objectively. We calculate. We can catalog them and categorize them, and we have, and to a large extent. And there's not a single damn thing in meat that's harmful. Not a single one. The only one they had to talk about was saturated fat and cholesterol. That's been thoroughly disproven. I mean, they're clinging onto it desperately, but it's just it's just getting pathetic at this point, really, because they have no evidence that it ever caused heart disease. So they're just throwing a temper tantrum at this point, trying to get their way, but they have no leg to stand on. And so there's nothing harmful in meat. There are harmful things in plants. This is an objective fact and reality. And so when you understand that and you educate her on that, she understands that, it becomes easier. And then you say, okay, well, maybe just try a little bit, see how you feel. Try it without all these other things, because when you eat things, depending on what you eat them with, you absorb things differently, digest things differently. Plants have digestive disruptors and anti-nutrients that stop you from digesting and absorbing things properly. And so if you eat meat with plants, you will have a different experience than if you just eat meat on its own. So give it a try, see how it goes. And they'll come around. It just have to sort of decondition themselves from that way of thinking. And I did too. I would eat fat and I'd be like, oh God, I have to cut off the fat. And I'm like, wait, what the hell am I doing? Trust the research, trust the evidence. The fat's good for me. Eat the damn fat. But it was hard. I had to recondition myself. I had to eat a small bit of fat with a lean piece of meat. And I was like, okay, that tastes good. I can do that. And it took weeks and weeks and weeks before I got more and more comfortable just eating fat. And it's we condition ourselves in a lot of ways. It's just deprogramming. You get brainwashed, like we're in a cult. We're in this cult of cholesterol, and we have to be deprogrammed. And so it takes a bit of time, but we can. So just work on that, and that's how you get people to come around, young or old. Everyone's been brainwashed, and we just need to get out of this stupid cult of cholesterol and move on with our lives. Austin, thank you very much for the super chat. Is ketoacidosis something we should be worried about on carnivore? Absolutely not. That is just because it has the word keto in it does not mean it is anything to do with ketosis or nutritional ketosis or just having and making and utilizing ketones. So ketoacidosis is when you're getting acidotic because you're producing tons of lactate, you're going through anaerobic activity, and you're generating energy that way. You're not able to, don't have any insulin, so you can't get any energy into cells properly. Your cells have to go through different mechanisms of energy energy generation. You build up a lot of acid as a result of that. You become acidotic. And you have very high ketones, but you have enormously high ketones, and you have enormously high glucose as well. And so it's a completely different phenomenon. It is not a natural biochemical state, which ketosis is. And so, when you just fast, if you fast for 5 days or 10 days or 2 weeks or a month, are you going to get into ketoacidosis? No, there's nowhere, anywhere. No one suggests that anywhere. Okay, well, you're in ketosis, right? So why would you, if you're not going to get it there, why would you get into it when you're actually eating food and just still in that same metabolic state? No, it is not something you have to worry about. It's just that's the beginning of that word, keto, scares people. Like, ooh, ketones, ketoacidosis. Ooh, that's bad. It's a different word, And, it's like saying that asphalt is bad because it starts with the same start as assault. And so asphalt is going to assault you. It's going to kill you because it's the same word as assault. We have different words for different things. They mean very different things. So just because it has keto in it just means that there's ketones in the process. It doesn't mean that the ketones are causing the acidosis or the harm. And so it's a completely different thing. So no, don't worry about that. But that is something that people are concerned. Oh my God, you're going to go into ketoacidosis. No, you're not. No one goes into ketoacidosis except for type 1 diabetics that can't make insulin. Even type 2 diabetics, unless they're insulin dependent, cannot go into ketoacidosis. So it comes from not making insulin and not being able to utilize any glucose or ketones or get any energy into cells with insulin, right? So very different, very different. And no, it's not something you have to worry about. Oh, a very sweet little Ellie Melly, who we just got engaged. If people hadn't come across that, we just got engaged on our Wyoming trip. So little Ellie Melly says, I love and appreciate you. We're very grateful for your help, care, and commitment, and everything else. Thoughts on eating the trending moldy beef? Yeah, that's what people call high meat. Maybe, who knows? Maybe there's some bacteria there that can help your microbiome. If your microbiome is already established, and probably don't need to worry about it, though. Inuit that have just been eating meat their whole life and not necessarily horribly rotted meat, they have very healthy microbiomes. And more and more people coming to carnivore, even from clean omnivorous diets or clean omnivorous ketogenic diets that are high in fiber and all this sort of stuff, actually improve their microbiome just by going to unrotten meat and cutting out everything else. And so the moldy beef, some people have found that it really helps them. Some people have just been so sick and they have so many illnesses, and they found the moldy meat side of things first, and that was the first thing they went to, and they really helped. But my question is, did they try just a normal carnivore diet first? Because I'm pretty sure that it would have been the same. It would have helped anyway, and you wouldn't have had eaten rotten beef. Which is, I've seen videos, some of these people on news interviews and things like that. And it's like their whole fridge is like furry mold. It's just like, not what I want. And they didn't want it either. They were like, yeah, it's disgusting. It's horrible. I open the fridge, it stinks up the whole house. I have to eat it outside. It's horrible. It makes the house smell disgusting. But this is the only thing that's making me better. And I have to do it. And that's understandable. I mean, people get so sick that they just have to do something. And that's one of them. That's one that they get to. But I would really, really want them to try just a normal carnivore diet with like a normal steak and see what that does. And if that's not enough, if that's not good enough, and they think that the high meat goes down better, then sure, go for it. I mean, I'm fine. And so I don't feel the need to do that. Some traditionally prepared meats that are let spoil a bit, like in Norway, there's like rotfisk, and that was sort of like this half-rotten salmon that the Vikings would pack into barrels, and then just people having packed barrels, and they would travel with, or they'd have for long winters and all that sort of stuff, and I couldn't get fresh meat. They ate that. I wouldn't have a problem eating that sort of stuff. Just letting things just rot in my fridge, probably not. I mean, you don't really know what bacteria is on there. You get any sort of different sort of Staph aureus with some sort of super toxin secreted. You get very sick, very, very sick. So I think that letting it raw, I mean, eating raw, I don't have a problem with, as long as it's not, visibly contaminated or, it doesn't smell off or all these sorts of things. I don't have a problem with that. That's fine. I actually do that fairly regularly, just from preference. I think it tastes nice. Raw liver, that's the only way I'll eat liver, and I don't eat much liver, but if I do, it's raw. And but letting it rot, I mean, you're not really in control about what bacteria get on that. Some of the traditional ways of preserving, fermenting, and spoiling meat or dairy in a controlled fashion, that is, going to be a bit better. But I don't think, if you don't need it, why would you? And the thing is that, I argue to people, well, if you haven't gone carnivore, I feel fine. I feel good. I don't need to go carnivore because carnivore is for healing sick people. It's just for being your best. It's just for being optimal. And so I tell people, it's like, well, I don't need to because I feel good. It's like, well, actually, I don't think you realize how shitty you actually feel. And you won't until you stop feeling that way. You go carnivore and you'll realize just how horrible you felt your whole life. I'm sure people can make the same argument to me about like, well, you haven't tried high meat. Well, then you don't even know how bad you feel. Could be, but do I need that information right now? I don't think so. So, I don't know. And the thing is, though, I haven't come across people who have, the people that I've seen that have just gone high meat, they've just gone straight there, and they skipped go and just went, straight to boardwalk and just went boom. And they had benefits, and that's great. But was it just from cutting out all the other things and going carnivore, or was it actually the moldy carnivore that was the benefit? I don't know. I think it's important to do this in a staged series of progression. And, maybe those people that are on high meat, maybe just try normal meat and see how you go. And maybe you just feel just as good. Maybe you feel better. Maybe your breath doesn't stink all the time like rotting meat, and your house is able to entertain guests and maybe even have a date, those sorts of things. So, food for thought. And, but yeah, those are my thoughts on moldy beef. Raja the King, thank you very much for the super chat. Your thoughts on semen retention? Thanks, Doc. I don't think about semen retention, so I don't know about that. I've sort of heard people mention this, which I think is a very strange phenomenon. People, I guess, intentionally give themselves blue balls, and I don't know what that's supposed to accomplish. But I don't know what that's supposed to do, so I haven't really looked into it. I don't think you need to do these tricks. I think you just eat meat, work out, get out in the sun, play sports, be happy, have kids, have a lot of kids, have carnivore kids, raise healthy, happy, strong, educated, intelligent carnivore kids, and let's get a whole generation of healthy ass kids and healthy ass adults that know how to eat properly and aren't going to get sucked into this nonsense, and you're fine. And then on that point, when we're sort of addressed all that stuff, we can worry about semen retention. But I've not looked into it myself, so I don't know. It's not something I generally need to worry about, like I wouldn't really care about, it's just fine for those who want to do it. I have no idea what it would benefit you, but I haven't really looked into it, and probably wouldn't do much with that information if I did. So probably not going to. But anyway, yeah. Sorry, can't. Don't have too many thoughts on that. Rubik's, thank you very much for the super chat. Should we worry about the mucus layer eating gut bacteria that are supposed to help us, but only if we eat fiber? No fiber, or the harmful protein fermentation byproducts of our microbiome? Yeah, so that's not true. It's maybe in some cases, but like if you sort of, the idea is if you're just eating a whole bunch of processed food, it's hyper palatable, it's also hyper absorbable because it's just a bunch of just free glucose and things like that, and you just eat these things, you absorb a lot of it. You don't really have anything else going into your small intestine, so the bacteria don't have anything to eat. So the argument is that they're going to eat the mucus layer, and that can get rid of some protection. But is that actually what happens in real life? Do we have any strong evidence of that? I'm actually not convinced of that, and I've seen people make that assertion. I've never seen anybody back it up with any actual data. I don't know where they're getting that. They're just saying it, and it may be based on something, but I haven't seen any of those people making that argument actually supply the evidence. And so when someone says that, be curious and just say, okay, great. What's that based on? Where does it say that happens? Well, this guy said it. Okay, no, but what's the evidence that actually happens? Because what happens when bacteria don't get enough food is they die out, and other bacteria take their place that are able to survive in those circumstances. And that's the same. Or I mean, that would have to apply to fasting populations. And if we have people that are fasting for religious purposes or whatever, and they're not eating for a number of days at a time, are they stripping their mucus layer and getting diseases and harm? They're not eating fiber. They're not eating anything, and so no food is getting into your gut. And if you have bacteria that predominantly rely on fiber, and you stop eating fiber, those bacteria just go away. They don't just all of a sudden start turning pathological and turn into a problem like that. They just die, and other bacteria outcompete them. And that's what happens. Your microbiome changes every single day based on what you eat. And so it's I don't buy it. And people that have been carnivore for a long period of time, and Inuits, etc., they have very healthy microbiomes, and they don't have any of these problems, these theoretical problems that people have come up with to say that, well, this is going to be a problem because you're going to strip away your mucus lining, and yet they don't. So it's a theory, but it doesn't seem to be borne out in reality. The other thing too, one of the major proponents of this is Dr. Robert Lustig, who I've got a lot of time for. I really love Dr. Lustig's work on sugar, and he talks a lot about fiber and things like that. But he has specifically said that in the context of carnivore, you don't need fiber for your microbiome, right? And he goes into that. And he talks about the Inuit and how they don't eat any fiber, and they've got really healthy microbiomes, and they're really healthy in general. So it's if you're eating a mixed diet, or especially a processed food diet, that's a problem, or that he argues that's a problem, and that you want the fiber for your microbiome in that context. But if you're not doing that and you're just eating meat, you don't need it. And what fibrous plants were people eating when they were crossing the land bridge from Asia to North America during the last ice age in the Arctic, right? There were no plants. This is 1,500 miles north of what is now Seattle, and Seattle was under a mile-high block of ice. So what the hell did the Arctic Circle look like? It's there's no plants growing. I mean, they're not growing corn up there. So it's just not the case. If this was something that was essential, as they said that fiber is essential as an essential nutrient. Essential means it's essential to life, and you die without it. And here I am, and here are the Inuits, and here are all our ancestors that have made it through all the ebbs and flows of this past 2 million years of ice ages that we've had. So, sorry, not necessary. So yeah, no, and you definitely don't need it for your microbiome. No, absolutely not. Check your microbiome. You can see for yourself, and you can see how healthy it is when you're on a carnivore diet. People have been doing it more and more, and they're getting really, really excellent results. So yeah, check it out. King Cole, thank you very much for the super chat. Your thoughts on occasional fasting, mimicking diets, low protein to stimulate autophagy? Well, the fasting mimicking diets are ketogenic diets. So they're saying that it's like, well, when you're fasting, you want to mimic. We have all these studies that show the benefits of fasting, but that's really hard to do. What about a diet that mimics fasting? So fasting mimicking diet, that's just a ketogenic diet. And what that does is it's just a diet that keeps your insulin low. And it's insulin being low that brings about autophagy. That stimulates autophagy. Why? Because high insulin stops autophagy. So it's not the fasting that's going to do this, and it's not anything to do with just not eating. It has to do with your insulin being low. So yes, any diet that lowers your insulin will stimulate autophagy, and the lower your insulin goes down to normal levels, because you need some insulin. It's a very important hormone. You die without it, but too much, you die with it, and too much, you will block autophagy. So you just get that down to normal fasting levels, normal stable levels, and you will be going through autophagy. And so studies have actually shown that ketogenic diets in general bring about autophagy and mitophagy. And so after 3-4 months on a ketogenic diet like carnivore, you have 4 times the number of mitochondria, and they're 4 times as effective. So this is not because you're starving yourself. This is a normal housekeeping process that your body has to go through all the time to break down old, tired, senile old cells and mitochondria and organelles and replace them with newer, better versions to keep you young. It's just something that keeps you young and healthy. And when you eat more carbohydrates, you age quicker for a number of reasons. One, it blocks growth hormone, which is basically the hormone of youth. It keeps your tissues regrowing and repairing themselves. And as your growth hormone and IGF-1 goes down, you age faster. So that's one. And insulin blocks the action of growth hormone. But also because you're building up AGEs that age you with those advanced glycation end products. You're getting rid of those, and you're going through autophagy when your insulin is down. So you're literally aging much more slowly, and sometimes you're aging backwards if you're able to repair a lot of this damage and fix your hormones in a lot of ways. Autophagy is just a normal functioning part of your physiology. And so if you just have normal insulin levels, you will be going through autophagy the whole time. You don't need to fast, and you don't need to do a special version of a carnivore diet. Carnivore diet is so-called fasting mimicking diet. As long as your fasting insulin is low, you're in autophagy and you'll be fine. Or as long as your insulin is generally low throughout the day, you'll be going through autophagy. And so they see this in ketogenic diets, that you still get the same effects of autophagy by being on a ketogenic diet, like a carnivore diet. And so this is just normal. It's just a normal part of our life and our bodies. So another question from Nav. Nav, thank you very much for the super chat. I have loose stools on strict carnivore. Could I have, oh, sorry. Hey, buddy. Got you. I got you, little boy. Hey, buddy. Okay. So back to Nav. Nav says, I have loose stools on a carnivore diet. Could I have an actual condition that causes fat malabsorption, like EPI or something like that? How can I find out? I mean, I suppose you could, but, my mouth. If you eat too little fat, you can get watery diarrhea. If you eat too much fat, you can get diarrhea as well. So it's sort of a U-shaped curve. So you want to be right in that middle ground. You're eating enough fat that it keeps it soft, but not too hard, but also not liquid. And if you do that, then you should be fine. Also, when people are, going on carnivore, they don't always cut out all plants. They don't go full 100% carnivore. They still drink coffee. Most people on earth drink coffee. Don't know why. I've never liked coffee, but it is a laxative, and it causes a laxative effect. And when you take out fiber, it has a much stronger laxative effect. And so when people go carnivore, they still drink coffee, and so they get loose stools. Or they drink tea and they get loose stools. Or they take magnesium supplements because they think they need magnesium supplements and they get loose stools. Or they're diabetic and they're on metformin, which can cause loose stools. Or they use artificial sweeteners, usually in the coffee or the tea, and they get loose stools because artificial sweeteners are laxatives as well, And so all of those things need to be taken into consideration as well. And then you need to eat enough fat, try to get 1 to 2 grams of fat per gram of protein, and see where that lands you. If you're getting a bit of constipation mixed in with watery diarrhea, and most days are like watery stools, and then you get a bit of hard stools, that's overflow diarrhea. You're eating so little fat, you're nearly, getting sort of obstructions. You need to eat a lot more fat. And, if you eat just any amount of fat and just comes right out of you right away, Could be that you're just eating a lot more fat than your body can contend with, or you're just not absorbing it. But, just eat the amount that your body's absorbing, and you should be fine. Your body will absorb some. And so just eat that amount. And if your body wants a lot less than other people's, maybe less than 1 gram per gram of protein, and that's what gives you normal stools, fine. Try it. If you're just eating lean meat and you're still getting loose stools, you're not eating enough fat. It's not that you're eating too much fat and you're not absorbing fat. It's that you're not eating enough fat and you're actually getting too much protein, and that can actually cause loose stools. Protein poisoning, one of the symptoms of protein poisoning is diarrhea, loose stools, and watery diarrhea. So it can come from too much protein and from not enough fat, where you get partially obstructed and get what's called overflow diarrhea. But it can also come from too much fat. So you just have to play around with it, but there will be a spot where your body will just be able to absorb that fat and be fine with it. And just make sure you're getting enough, make sure you're not getting too much protein, and you'll be fine. And cut out all that other stuff. Oh, but I was drinking the same amount of coffee that I was before. Yeah, but before you were eating fiber, a bunch of other crap that slowed down the transport of your stools throughout your intestines. So just cut all that stuff out. Just meat, salt, water. That's it. If you're having a lot of salt, that was another one. I've come across this before, where people are just adding like rock salt and tons of salt to their water. So they're like, oh, you have to have so much salt if you're on carnivore. No, you damn well don't. I don't use any salt. And there are a lot of people that are on long-term carnivore that have never used salt for decades. So no, you don't need salt. Some people need more salt in the early adaptation phase when their insulin is rebalancing and their kidney function is rebalancing from the lower insulin. And then that goes away. And once you're adapted, you don't need excessive amounts of salt. There are isolated cases. My friend Dave Feldman seems to need salt. He just feels a lot better with more salt. He's the only person I've ever seen that has been on a ketogenic diet for years and needed to keep adding salt. And he's not 100% carnivore. Would that change anything? I don't know. But I haven't seen anybody else have to do that. But at first, sure. And then, but then some people just really, really take it to heart that they need a lot of salt. So just dumping salt in. They have like a quarter of their thermos full of rock salt, and they're just drinking that all the time. That's a colon flush. That's how you flush out your colon. That causes a laxative sort of effect. It draws in a lot of water through osmosis, and you just flush out just all your intestines. So just keep all that in mind, and you should be able to get to a happy place. I'm gonna just let the little boy out real quick. I brought him here just to satisfy my sister, but he looks like he wants to get out. 1 second. Hey, boys. Okay, what about that? Just the little boy out. Okay. So a question from John. John, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, doc. My bilirubin is constantly high. Is that caused by eating too much meat, or is it the beginning of a liver issue? I've been on the Lion diet for the past 8 months now. It could be absolutely nothing. Bilirubin can go up if you have a blockage in your biliary tree. You have like a stone or a stenosis or something like that. Spasms of your sphincter of Oddi, those sorts of things. And then you get a back pressure of bile and that builds up in the liver, and then you get that in your blood, and you get jaundice, and you get yellow skin and yellow sclera in your eyes, and you get super itchy skin, pruritus, and you get sick, and your liver function tests go nuts because your liver is being damaged because you're getting this back pressure and damage to your liver. So if your bilirubin is elevated in isolation, and you don't have jaundice, and your liver function test is fine, you don't have horrible pains here like you have an obstructed, a blocked bile duct, and everything else is fine, it could have what's called Gilbert's syndrome or Gilbert's disease, which is just benign high bilirubin and nothing else is the matter, and you're fine. So it's all about context. If everything else is fine, that's probably what it is. If you're worried about it, go see your doctor. But if you're not jaundiced, then it's probably not an obstruction. Either way, it's not from meat, because meat doesn't cause that. In fact, eating fat makes it so you won't get develop stones. If you had a stone and you start eating fat, that stone could get blocked, but you get a lot of pain from that too. But it doesn't cause the stones in the first place. It's actually trying to clear the stones and get those suckers out of there. But if you have big enough stones and they get caught, you could still need surgery. So don't avoid that just because. So you got your bilirubin tested. Presumably that was a doctor who ordered that, and so they should be able to give you an evaluation and say if they're worried about something for some reason. But if it's just isolated elevated bilirubin on its own, it could very well be Gilbert syndrome, and a lot of people have that, and it's just completely benign that we know of, and it's not caused by meat anyway, and obstructions aren't caused by meat either. So but just chat with your doctor and make sure that everything else is fine too, and should be fine. Straight Racer 45 Go. Thank you very much for the super chat. Can people have food intolerance to beef? My autism spectrum child had a food sensitivity testing done. It said beef and eggs are irritants. We want to go carnivore. I think that's nonsense. Those food sensitivity tests, I think, are just complete bogus. If you get bitten by a Lone Star tick and you get alpha-gal syndrome, that can cause an acquired immune allergic reaction disorder to the alpha galactose carbohydrate that is found in meat. But you can still eat other foods like fish and some white meats and things like that. Should be able to eat eggs. Some people are a bit sensitive to eggs. Usually the egg whites. See, if he's reacting negatively, or if he or she is reacting negatively to it, to eggs, then you just cut them out. But most people will be fine. And beef, I doubt it. But if it's something that he does better on lamb or other meats, you can still go carnivore. If you never eat beef and eggs again, you can still go carnivore. There's a lot of other animals in the world, you eat them. And so the main thing is not eating all the other stuff as well. So the carbohydrates is really important for your child to be in ketosis. So get those ketones running around the brain and turning things on that are supposed to be on, and turning things off that are supposed to be off, and allowing their brain to run on their optimal fuel source. And then providing the animal sourced nutrients that are beneficial to the brain. So I would doubt highly that he has actual true insensitivity to beef. Maybe eggs, not beef. Those food sensitivity tests, I think are just complete bogus. They just say some stupid things for the sake of it. I don't buy it. Try it yourself. See how he does. I'm sure they'll do fantastic and better than they ever have before. Give it a shot. I think it's really great that you're trying this for your autistic child. I think it will help dramatically, and hopefully it does. And when it does, please do come back and let everybody know about it, because more and more people need to know about it, because it's just like no one should have to live with autism. No one should have to develop with autism. No one should have to have that affect their family member, but that shouldn't have to affect the family member. That family member should be able to live a normal, happy, independent life, full of learning and fun and social interactions that are that are good for them. And it's harder to do that with autism. And so this is something that does help, and I've never seen it not help anyone with autism, any child or adult with autism. The younger you get them on, the better it will be, the more recovery they'll have, the more normal development of their brain they will have. And so it's really, really, really important to get this going. And so good luck with that. Please do let people know how you go. Let everyone know about it. Scream from the rooftops so that other people will think about this and try it with their children. Because, autistic kids are usually picky eaters. A lot of them don't want to eat meat. I think it's probably a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so, whatever you have to do, it's hard to get them to eat meat. Okay. Is it harder than living your entire life with autism? That's the question you need to ask yourself. And if the answer is no, well, then you need to figure it out, and that's not going to be easy. And that's not to diminish that and dismiss that. It's going to be very difficult, but it's worth it. It is definitely worth it. And it's something that can really save that person's life and actually literally give them an entirely new life and a much, much better life, hopefully. So good job. Really excited that you're trying that. Please do let us know how you go. I'm sure it's going to be great. Keith Cusarak, thank you so much for the super chat. You said Dr. Amara's hair looks like a Muppet. I don't know if I said that, but maybe as thick as a Muppet's. What do you think about his fermented protocol? Maybe I did say so. I don't think he looks like a Muppet. I think he said his hair was thinning. Now he has really thick hair. Maybe I equated that to how thick like a Muppet's hair was, which is actually true. Thinking about it, like Bert and Ernie, it's just big, thick tuft of hair. He does. It's very thick hair, and he's 60 now, and so his fermenting protocol. I don't have a problem with it. I think if you're going to eat plants, you ferment the hell out of them. Why would you eat anything else? That's going to lower the toxic load and increase the bioavailability of those nutrients. But he doesn't do it for the plants. He does it as a supplement for the bacteria. That's what he wants. He wants bacteria, and he wants that bacteria for his microbiome. And I think that's great if you're trying to reestablish your microbiome and get a good healthy gut bacteria. But if and he does it in certain ways, like he eats it up, chews up the ferments with meat. So he chews them up together, and it helps them break down together, and also helps Trojan horse that bacteria through the stomach acid and things like that, so they don't get killed straight away. There's people that say that doesn't happen and just gets killed anyway, but probably does kind of get some slip through. But the thing is too is that once you establish a good healthy microbiome, it's just there. All you need now is the prebiotics, not the probiotics. You just eating meat is just going to keep supplying the food requisite to keep maintaining those really healthy species of bacteria. And also the other thing is your oral biome changes as well. It changes dramatically when you start eating meat and cut out the carbs. The cavity causing bacteria are the ones that eat carbs. So you stop eating carbs and those bacteria die off. They don't eat your mucus layer. They just go away, and they stop causing cavities. They stop eating and rotting your teeth. So when you eat food, you're actually putting a bacterial load in the food bolus, and that's going down as well. And so I think that's probably what's seeding your microbiome, because people's microbiomes change when they're just eating different things without prebiotics, probiotics. And, as a friend of mine, Ben Azadi, who does the keto camp, those sorts of things, he's been doing keto for years. And he had, a very healthy diet, a lot of fatty meats, but also, vegetables and fiber and whole foods. Okay, great. Then he checked his microbiome while he was keto for years. It was okay. He said it was good. It wasn't great. And then he went, and then the suggestion was eat more, fruits and vegetables, more fiber, less meat and less red meat, and your microbiome will get better. And so he said, okay, I'm going to do the exact opposite and only eat red meat and drop all fiber and plants and fruits and vegetables. And what happened? In 3 months, his microbiome was far better than it was before. Now it was excellent. And now he had 6 new species of bacteria that didn't exist in his previous microbiome test. So where'd those come from? Were they just too small to detect? Possibly. Or did they come from somewhere else, like your oral biome, which is going to be very different on a carnivore diet. So I'm a big fan of Sean. He's a good friend of mine. And I like he does. He helps a lot of people. He does a lot. He's a pretty badass dude, by the way. He was in the military. Then he was a lawyer and a prosecutorial attorney. He was then he decided he wanted to go to medical school. Became an ER doctor. He was in the military as I said. I mean, he continued in the military as a doctor. He retired like a full bird colonel, and he also, in like the early 2000s, he was like awarded like best doctor in the armed services. There's like this whole thing. So he was like the best doctor in the armed services, and as a result, then Vice President Dick Cheney, who was having a lot of heart issues at the time, actually just picked out and was like, "Okay, you're the best in the military. You're my doctor." So he was Dick Cheney's personal doctor during the Bush administration, and probably afterwards. So yeah, he's done a lot of cool stuff. And then he got into like full-time nutritional research and all that sort of stuff, and came to carnivore, which is awesome. And so he's quite an accomplished person. So he's very well read, he's very intelligent, and he's such just an overachiever. I mean, seriously. He was talking to me about, making like eating meat's the best thing, but talking about, what about the best nutrition for cows that makes the best meat? So he's saying, I think I want to go back to vet school so that I can figure out the best beef products so we can make the best human food and the best humans possible. I'm like, dude just doesn't slow down. He's so excited. He's just so into these sorts of things and just learning more and optimizing people's health. So, I don't have anything wrong with what he's doing. I think that you can probably do the same thing with fermented animal products, fermented dairy, even fermented meat, if you want to get those bacteria. I have a sneaking suspicion that your oral biome, because you do have bacteria in your mouth, right? Unless you're using Listerine and bleaching your mouth all day, and then eradicating all the bacteria in your mouth, which you don't want to do. You want bacteria there. You just want the correct bacteria there. Those bacteria are going to go down too. So I suspect that you're going to have very healthy microbiome regardless, and that's what a lot of people are finding. I have yet to check my microbiome, so that's something I need to do. But I would expect it to be very good, and I guess we'll see. But a lot of other people are doing that too. So if you've taken back antibiotics, probably a good idea to take some fermented yogurt, things like that. I don't think you necessarily have to use plants, but you can use fermented dairy, so like yogurts, plain yogurt, things like that. And reseed that, or if you have, just eating an unhealthy diet and you're eating a whole bunch of garbage and you're adding some yogurt and fermented dairy and meat products and things like that, sure. Once you've established your microbiome, it should be able to be maintained just with just your diet alone. You shouldn't have to keep repopulating the bacteria, because if you have to keep repopulating bacteria, obviously that's not an environment that those bacteria can survive in. You have to keep getting more and more and more, and they just die out and die out and die out. Well, obviously that's not the right environment for them. And so the right environment for the right bacteria are going to be fed by the right diet, by our right diet. And whatever our evolved optimal diet is, that will bring about, cultivate, and support the optimal biome, microbiome, oral biome, and gut biome. And that's what makes sense to me from an evolutionary biology point of view. So, yeah, so those are my thoughts on that. But Dr. Amar is great. I'm a big fan of Sean. There we go. L. Mellon, thank you very much for the super chat. How much water do you drink per day on carnivore? I'm struggling with dehydration and burning dry eyes, but drinking water feels like a lot of water. 3 months carnivore and ex-vegan. Well, first of all, welcome. A lot of people here are ex-vegans, and they're doing a lot better, and hopefully you are as well. Well, if you're dehydrated and you're having dry mucosa, chapped lips, and dry mouth, and dry nose, and dry eyes can be from something else, but from other things, certainly, allergies, all that sort of stuff. But if you are, dehydrated in that sense, do try to just drink more water. Whatever amount of water you're drinking, it's not enough if you're dehydrated, right? By definition. I try to tell people, try to aim for about 3 liters a day. And then if your thirst signals say more, then go more. Some people are drinking like 1.5 or 1 to 1.5 liters a day. And I'm like, okay, why don't you aim for 3? They get to 3 and they go like, oh my God, I'm so thirsty. And they need to drink 5. Okay, well then their body, needs that. And it's just, you've suppressed your thirst signals for so long that you don't really see that, right? So aim for 3. If that's not enough and you're still thirsty, you're still dehydrated, drink more. I try to drink more if I don't drink as much as I want. After a few days, I start getting like leg and foot cramps in bed. And I was like, okay, I need to really focus on getting more water now. But if you're dehydrated and you feel dehydrated, you're dehydrated. And so, please do get more water. Alina Ball, thank you very much for the super chat. Not seeing a message there, but maybe there's one down the road. Lucy Dust, thank you so much for the super chat. Dr. Chaffee, I'm thriving today, living life to the fullest, entirely thanks to you. 3 years back, I didn't know that this was possible. Thank you. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm really glad to hear that. We hear stories like this all the time. They never get old because it's worrying. I mean, you get so many people yelling at you that you're going to hurt people and kill people and all these sorts of things. And I know it's not true. I know for a cold frozen fact, it's not true. Because I know from my experience, from my patients' experiences, from looking at hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people now doing this, and how beneficial their lives, benefited their lives have been. And also because I understand the biology and physiology from it, because I've studied it in minute detail. So I know that I'm not hurting people, but you still worry. If you have any sort of conscience, you have to worry about that. Because the thing is, you're going to get blinded. Like, oh, no, it's definitely right. Well, then you're going to miss the subtle signs. And so, you need to not do that. And so, I still have it in the back of my head. I'm like, oh, I really hope that this doesn't, hurt people. I don't want people to be hurting. But it's just, more and more and more. You just keep seeing this stuff come out. And it's just like, okay. And then you can predict it. You say, if you do this, this will happen. I do that with my patients. These are your bloods. These are what's off. This is why they're off. And it's because of what you're eating and how you're eating it. Okay. You change that. You're going to get these changes in your bloods, in your health, in your weight, in your hormones, and you're going to feel differently in these ways. And then they do it and they implement it. And then we check their bloods again in 2-3 months, and the exact things that I predicted happened. So a theory is only as good as what it's able to predict. And this predicts it every damn time. So it's always good to see that, because it's just like, okay, great. I'm not steering somebody the wrong way. I'm not hurting them, and they are getting benefited. And so it's always good to see that. It's so good. It's reassuring for me as well, because, if you ever get so complacent, oh, I just know everything, you're setting yourself up for a disaster. What was it like? It's something like hubris precedes the fall or something like that. It's just like, like there's always confidence before the fall or something like that. Maybe someone remembers that. I forget the damn saying, but basically you're overconfident. Everything's fine, and that's when you get blindsided and you're done. So you always need to question whether what you're saying is right or not. You have to. And so I do, and I worry about that. And so it's always good to see people getting helped. And so thank you for that. I'm really glad to hear that you're doing better, and keep it up. And keep up the good work, and keep being an example for other people, because it really helps them seeing your example. Michelle P., thank you for the super chat. Again, I don't see another question down below, but possibly. Also, guys, we're going to be wrapping up soon. Just going through the last couple super chats here, and then we're going to have to wrap up because I got to get to work and hopefully see some more great recoveries. Alina Ball, thank you for the super chat. I'm carnivore 6 months. You did another super chat. That's what it was. Well, thank you for both super chats. I'm carnivore 6 months. I've lost 20 kgs. Amazing. That's great. I'm having full abdominal hysterectomy because of my fibroids growing. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Can I still be on carnivore diet before, during my operation, and after recovery? 100%. And in fact, it's going to be even better because you're going to be healthier and you're going to recover better. I mean, we already have tons of studies showing that people get better wound healing post-surgery with higher protein diets. And carnivore diet is a lot more protein than the standard diet. And you're also going to be in ketosis. So you're going to lower your inflammation. So you're not going to be in as much pain, and you're not going to have as much swelling and inflammation and slowing of your wound healing process. So you should find that you have better wound healing as a result, and better recovery as a result. I'm sorry that your fibroids are still growing. In fact, ketogenic diets have actually been shown to help shrink fibroids, but sometimes the horse is out of the barn and it's sort of too much, and the body can't really recover. But it has helped other people. It has shrunk fibroids in other people. So is there possibly a chance to get another scan now that you've been carnivore for 6 months and maybe see if they're still growing or if maybe they've shrunk? Might be worth it. It might save you a surgery, actually. And then this is sort of a moot point, but yes, 100%. You can still do this before, during, and after your surgery. And I think it would be a very good idea if you did. In the hospital, you're going to have to bring food in because it's just sugary crap every single meal of every single day at those places, which is just insane. You have the sickest people in the world, and you're giving them the worst food. It's so stupid. So you'll have to bring in your own food if you want to actually eat like a human. And if you want to eat like a pig in the 1930s being fattened for slaughter, then yeah, you can eat the hospital food. But I wouldn't. So yeah, yes, you can definitely do it. And I definitely would encourage that. So good luck with that. Good luck with the surgery. Hope that goes well. The Happy Housewife. This will be the last question, everybody. And then we have some super stickers, but then we'll have to cut it because I got to run to work. Happy Housewife says, "Hi, Dr. Chaffee. Is there any info on a carnivore and preeclampsia? My first pregnancy had it severely, resulting in premature delivery. My most recent pregnancy was carnivore and didn't have it at all. I don't know if there's any studies that have gone out. I do have the memory of preeclampsia being associated, well, certainly with diabetes, but also just insulin resistance in general, if I'm not mistaken. So, that sort of thing would help prevent it as well. One thing you can look at, just on PubMed or Google Scholar, is actually really accessible for people. And you look up things like preeclampsia and ketogenic or low carb or insulin resistance or diabetes, and you can then see, have some studies that say like, oh yeah, preeclampsia is strongly associated with diabetes and insulin resistance and all that sort of stuff. Or that, maybe people have done ketogenic diets, people have a history of preeclampsia, they put them on ketogenic diets and all that sort of stuff. There have been thousands of studies using ketogenic diets in humans for very specific health issues and distinct medical outcomes. So there's a lot of information out there, and my memory is that yes, that is related to things like insulin resistance and diabetes, and so going on a carnivore diet, should eliminate those, at least those causes of preeclampsia. But don't quote me on that. That's just my memory. But yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure. But you can sort of find that on Google Scholar or PubMed. But that's great that you didn't have it with your second pregnancy. I think that, if you're eating what you're supposed to eat and your body's working the way it's supposed to work, you're going to have pregnancies the way they're supposed to go, which are a lot less morning sickness, much more smoothly. The fetus is going to develop faster. The baby's going to be much stronger and healthier and develop better. And they're going to live a much longer, healthier, happier life because they're going to be so much better developed and able because of what their very nice mom, has done for them. So congratulations to you. You're doing everything you can to make your child as healthy and happy as they can be, and they're really going to benefit from that. So great job. Lucky kids. They got a very nice mom. Okay. Thank you so much. There's a couple other little chats here from Kinkle. It says, I'm 75 and love carnivore and thriving. That's great to hear. And then from Tracy, had a super sticker. Thank you so much for that, Tracy. And then from Dirk van der Tuin, another super sticker. Thank you very much for that, Dirk. I really appreciate it. Then there's another message here from Striker Fam. It says, carnivore for 4 weeks now, medically retired, law enforcement officer, back and neck injury. Overtime, I blew up. Down 20 pounds, brain fog gone, depression gone, able to focus so much better. And you started on this. Thank you. Well, that's fantastic. And great. It's only 4 weeks. You've lost 20 pounds and all those issues have gone away. It's just amazing. Toxin and toxicity, that's it. You remove the toxin and toxicities go away. Brain fog is a toxicity. Depression is a toxicity. Weight gain is a toxicity. It's a byproduct of toxicity, and or can be anyway. And so it's you're getting rid of the toxins, and the toxicity goes away, and it can go away pretty damn quick. And that's what's so wonderful about this. And you add those things back in, guess what? They'll come back, and that's a cause and effect relationship. So that's all the evidence you need, really. And if somebody wants a randomized controlled trial with 20,000 people before they start it, okay, it's their life. They want to keep suffering in misery and illness, they can. I'm sure as shit not a chance in hell. So, great job, everyone who's willing to, take the chance and actually try something new for them that can benefit their life and getting all these massive benefits, and please do, leave in the comments what this has helped you with. It really helps people. Can't tell you how many people have come to these Q&As or videos, and they're like, oh, is this really, I don't know, this sounds crazy. But then they just see all the comments of all these people changing their lives, and they're like, hold on a second, that sounds like me. I have those problems, and I've seen 50 people with the same problem get better. And they say, okay, well, I'll try it. And lo and behold, it works for them too. It's almost as if it's related. And that really helps. So that really helps people. And so you'll help a lot of people by being active, by commenting, by telling people your story, making videos, leaving comments, being active, with those idiots, trolls, and haters that go on all my posts and things like that. And try to, talk trash and discredit me and try to say that I'm not a doctor and so you shouldn't listen to me. Well, I am a doctor. And even if I weren't, that doesn't change the veracity of what I say. That's ad hominem. Is what I'm saying true or not? It is. And it's backed up by evidence. And I am a medical doctor with a medical degree and a functioning medical license, unlike other people who, like Dr. Edge, who does not have a current medical license, but he's the one throwing around shade, trying to say that I am the one that's not the practicing doctor. Well, no, that's him. And well, that's the impression he's giving people anyway by his careless words. So, you guys help others with that. You guys going into the comments, wading into those Lane Norton's comments and being like, no, this is bullshit. This has helped me. This has helped all these other people. And you're just, you can be nice about it and be saying, look, you're being blind. You're blinded by your ideology. You want to be right. You're making excuses for it. You're making excuses why this works for some people and all that stuff, but you're dismissing it, and dismissing what it is. And, you need to be held accountable, call them out and use your example and say that. And more people that get active on this, will overwhelm the haters, and people will have to start paying attention. And the good thing is that the people that matter are paying attention. There's different researchers that are figuring this out, starting to research it and publish more and more data on it. And the people are figuring this out and saying, you know what, that's enough evidence for me. I think it's worth trying it myself and seeing what happens. And it works. So that's the only thing that really matters, is that it works and that people are getting benefited by it. So well done, everyone. Please do share your experiences with carnivore diet. And again, and if you want to be part of different published case series for these amazing things that people have cured with the carnivore diet, please do email me at anthonychaffee@gmail.com. Thank you all, everyone. I will see you next time.